Thank you for your patience and me getting started. Oh yeah, Gina. Yeah, so Gina, if anything happens, you'll have to unmute and tell me because I can't see.
Okay, I will.
All right, there you are. There you are. Good. All right, so we're gonna get started. We're gonna talk about feedback today. So feedback has been something we've been kind of leaning towards and talking about for a few months, years, for a while. And it becomes more and more apparent that, you know, the giving of feedback is a difficult skill, but the taking of feedback is also arguably harder. So we want to kind of define that better, flesh it out, and give people a chance to kind of practice and know what sort of responses are encouraged, expected. So we want this continual feedback loop. So feedback never just goes one way. Put out frequent surveys, you know, to glean kind of how you feel about leadership, how you feel about your clinical leaders. So we find that to be very important. So maintaining that loop requires that everybody kind of have that ability to take and absorb and use the feedback. So before I go through this ground rule or expectation, just a reminder that if you do unmute, so there are going to be throughout this training some times where I'm going to maybe ask people to practice things, right? So if you practice the things, you should mute yourself, right? So there's going to be times where we're all practicing things. And then there's going to be times where I might say like, hey, can somebody give me an example? And then you unmute yourself. So just remember that if you are unmuted, we are recording. So no client names, no client initials, no client descriptions, just because when we post this, we want to maintain the confidentiality of our kids. So in getting feedback in various meetings lately, you know, it kind of, I knew that these mini trainings are not always precisely informative to your practice. So they might feel great and like, oh, Rob, you were very entertaining. You know, that was great training, but then do we actually change what we're doing the next day? So the general feedback says no. General feedback says that, you know, good training, no change. Okay, so that's, you know, we know that a lot of that rides on the fact that we are not presenting information in the way that the skills of teaching and learning as defined by applied behavior analysis, we're not presenting information in that way, you know, in the grand scheme of, you know, our model of explanation, modeling, rehearsal, and then feedback. We're stopping at the explanation. Okay, so we know that's not terribly effective. So how are we going to change that? We got a few different ways. We've got our in-person workshops for the BCs and BAs, but for mini trainings, each training is going to include homework. Okay, so before I say that, I kind of already went through these things, but in order to have effective, you know, training, okay, there's two pieces. So I've got to be a good trainer. Anyone standing up here has to be a good trainer. We have to present the information in an engaging, informative way, right? But the second piece of that is that the onus is on you as the audience to take the information and use it. So we need to make sure that you're you know, fluent in it, that you can use those skills. But if you go out there and then just not use them, so that's on you. So you need to be asking questions, you know, practicing it and then incorporating it. So that's where this homework is coming into play. Okay, so in order to gain credit on trainings going forward, there is going to be a completion of a homework portion. Okay, and it's usually going to be simple, and it's largely going to be on the basis of, you know, the honor system. You know, so we might at some point, we've toyed with the idea of having having you send like short videos of you demonstrating a skill. We might still do that. We would love to figure out how to do some like in-person trainings, but with this network of programs, it's a little bit more difficult, and it certainly isn't something that we could replace this with on a monthly basis. So look to the future for different things, but in these mini trainings, when it's in this format, there will be homework that you're expected to go out into the community to your sessions and incorporate after the fact. I'm not even sure why I projected. There's nobody in the room, but there it is behind me. We shared our core kind of beliefs a few trainings ago. It's something that we're kind of like talking about and using to formulate everything that we kind of put together. But recently Ashley viewed something, or she kind of got on this idea of growth, and it struck a chord with all of us, I think. And I think that it feeds into our core values. I believe that one of our core values might actually be growth. I should know that, but on the spot, I'm forgetting. So this idea of growth is a growing together. So everything I just mentioned before, we really heavily focus on trainings. I'm very proud of the fact that we do frequent trainings. We have a lot of more trainings than you need available, but they're valueless if you don't actually use them in your practice. Okay, so you should always be looking for growth opportunities, both professionally and personally. So that's something that we want to encourage you to do. So that's where the whole kit and caboodle, whatever that means, that's where that all kind of is kind of initiating from, is this idea that we want to grow together. So if leadership is growing and nobody else is, then we're not really growing. If just the staff in the front line are growing, but leadership is stagnant, then we're not growing. So we need to grow together. At the autism conference, and there's only 3 resources listed for this training, although there's millions more. But the 3 primary ones that I pulled from, you'll see at the end, but the big one, like the kind of impetus of this training, was this presentation at the autism conference by Dr. Ellie Kazemi, who is just a fantastic presenter and speaker. And I strongly encourage that you listen to her talk. The link is in the training and we'll send it out. But her topic was on giving feedback, but that really was what kind of like stirred up, these kind of ideas. And if you're giving feedback, then you need to also be able to take feedback. So it works as a really nice loop. I think it informs itself to create that feedback loop. And in it, she said this amazing kind of quote that Ashley turned into this beautiful graphic here. There's a couple key ideas in this training that I want you to walk away with. And this is the first. Well, this is the second. The first one is that to grow, you need to also grow. You need to take the stuff. But the second one here is that, we need feedback to grow. You can't do it all by yourself. Okay, so there's 3 questions, feedback oriented, generally, that you should be asking yourself on a frequent basis. Okay, so question number 1 is, am I getting enough feedback? Okay, the answer is almost always going to be no. If the answer is yes, huzzah. Okay, then there's a whole other list of questions. If you're getting enough feedback, are you using it? Are you incorporating it? Are you understanding all that kind of stuff? But so if you get to that, are you getting enough feedback question? And most of us will say no, right? The answer to that is most likely no. So then question 2 is, if I'm not getting enough feedback, okay, what can I do? Right? So the rat is always right. You are the driver of growth. You can't wait for your bosses to make you grow. So if you're not getting enough feedback, what behaviors can you engage in that will make it more likely that you will? Okay, so the easiest one kind of that pops up would be like, well, I can ask. I can say like, hey, can I have some feedback? Hey, can you tell me how I'm doing? Hey, how did that look? Okay, so that's, that's one, but then there's also just making yourself available, attending supervisions, attending your team meetings and things like that, being available. Those are all skills additionally, or behaviors additionally, that will lead to more feedback. Okay, opening or checking your email more often, so that people know you're available. So those are some behaviors, just some behaviors that will make it more likely. And then the third one just blew my mind. I thought it was just fantastic. So she said, what might you be doing that is preventing, stopping feedback from being given to you? And I just thought this was just a wonderful consideration. So if you're not getting the feedback that you want, you might actually be engaging in behaviors that are halting feedback. So what would that look like, right? So if every time, and we're going to talk about these things, but if every time I'm getting feedback, I grimace, and some of you have seen Rob Harvey do this. I do indeed grimace when given feedback, because I take everything too personally. I'm going to talk about that too. But if I grimace every time someone gives me feedback, that's going to lead to less feedback. If I get angry, if I get defensive, if I refute what they're saying, if I storm off, if I don't speak to you for 10 days, if I just look stern and annoyed, like this is where awareness, you're working with people. So awareness of your non-vocal expression is very, very important. So I need to think about those things, because if I stop someone dead in their tracks the first time they try to give me feedback, they're going to be much less likely to give me feedback in the future, because I've punished their behavior. So, we really want to, you ABA people are catching what I said. So I punished the behavior by creating an aversive situation where they were uncomfortable and they felt like it was ineffective, thus punishing the behavior. So thinking about that, thinking about those three questions. I have to fix my clock. Kind of fell over here. Wrap it up. Whimsy, hold the clock. Got it. I hope it will stay that way. All right, there we go. All right, so 3 different skills, okay, to take. That's 4 skills, Rob. So 4 different skills that I want you to take out into the field with you. And here's a guy with all of the tools. So these are the things that I want you to be able to walk away from this training doing, okay? So number 1, seeking feedback. Okay, so if I'm not getting enough feedback, what can I do to get more? Okay, the second one, which really is, I think, the biggest focus of this particular training, is accepting constructive feedback. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of work to define like what that difference is, and then 3 plays into that. So we'll say that 3 is a subheading to number 2, thus 3 different skills. Clarifying non-constructive feedback would be, when someone says something that's not hurtful or just unacceptable, but it's not clear, you're getting that clarity. You're not just saying like, okay, and walking away and trying to figure it out. You're actually, using your skills to pull that apart and figure out what's going on. And then the 4th one, which we're not going to spend a huge amount of time on, but I do want to recognize that sometimes, feedback or statements are not like, you don't just have to take everything everyone says. There are things that are hurtful and non-productive that, we're going to kind of, say no to. All right, so this is a big slide. We'll spend a little bit of time on this one, because this is really where like the heart of this training is. So how do I accept feedback effectively? How do I take it? So the first one I find to be, it's a little, so I took this information from different sources. And this first one, I find it very interesting, but I do think it's valuable. So trying to appreciate compliments. Okay, it can be really, some people are a lot better with criticism than they are with compliments, right? But if you can't accept, compliment might be the wrong word, but if you can't accept that looks right, you're doing the right thing, this is going well. If you can't accept those, then it's hard to really shape your practice, right? And you could also, you could punish people's giving you compliments, and then you're never going to hear the stuff you're doing right. So it's important to be able to try to not only accept, but kind of appreciate those compliments. Take that moment, look at them, hold them, breathe them in, kind of pull that into your identity. As a person who really just allows my failures to fly around me at all times, I can really appreciate the fact that I really need to hold close my victories, so that becomes more my identity than the things that are failures. And if they don't sit well with you, approach that with some curiosity. So in the weekly emails, I've talked several times about curiosity, so they're like, hey, why does that bother me? Why do I not like being told that I'm doing well? Do I disagree with it? Do I not feel like I deserve such a state? Like just that kind of, kind curiosity is a valuable approach to all sorts of things. And it's a very analytic approach, and I can vouch for it being helpful. So that's kind of step one. That I can't really tell you how to do that perfectly. That's something I work on with my therapist. So I would recommend looking for other sources of, like, if you can't take compliments, especially professionally, how can you work on that? So number two, and this one I think is super, super important, and we see this frequently. So when you're receiving feedback, your brain, your fight or flight, your response is to say, no, that's not actually real, you are wrong. Okay, so you will have that response in your head many times. But as with many other things in a professional setting, you need to take what pops in automatically, and you need to interrupt that automatic chain. And you need to step in there, and you need to, kind of shift where your response goes. Okay. So when someone gives you feedback, okay, you don't need to justify it. You don't need to defend it. You don't need to refute it. Okay. You can take that. That's their perspective. So it's really not wrong. You might feel that it's inaccurate, but if somebody else sees your performance as being one way, then that's information for you. That's data for you to kind of take in and use to modify your approach yourself. And if you even just once, if you refute when someone gives you feedback and you're like, no, I don't think that's true, they're going to be much less likely to give feedback in the future. And the third resource on there, that article is really largely about that, is when people respond even neutrally, but especially negatively to feedback, that it decreases the chances. It's about other things too, but I thought that was kind of the most interesting piece. Like they're going to be much less likely to give you feedback in the future. And they're going to be more likely to they're going to tell you it was right even when it was wrong. That's a big part of the article right there. And I think that's like mind-blowing. And I want you to think about that a lot. So, you might do something wrong, but because in the past you have a history of arguing when they give you feedback, they might tell you you were right even when you were wrong because of their history with you and responses. So you're shaping people in so it's really important to avoid that response. Okay. Into number three, not taking feedback personally. You are at work. Everyone watching this, you're being paid to view this training. When you're out with kids, you are being paid. You are in a professional setting. Okay. So if you want to get mad when people give you feedback in your personal life, if you consider your coworkers friends, which I'm not going to tell you can't do that. obviously I met my wife at work, etc. Right? So so you can't stop those feelings from happening, but what you do need to do when you're at work, particularly, even when you work with your friends, you're still at work, you need to, again, step between that stimulus and then your response, and you need to take that moment to shape how that kind of comes out, right? So, at work, feedback is a requirement. Okay, that is a job expectation. So if you're not able to take it without getting mad, or you're not able to give it, or any of those situations, then you're not able to do your job effectively. And that's really something we're pushing and pressing. Okay, is that constant feedback loop. So we need to get past that emotional response. Now, there's something somebody might say. If someone says like, oh God, you're just terrible at this job. Well, that's, you might have an emotional response to that, because that statement that's a hurtful, it's not constructive, that statement. But still, you're at work. So there is a way to kind of get between that and be like, we need to talk about that, and if it's making you upset, if getting feedback makes you upset, again, approach that with curiosity, kind curiosity, right? So why does that bother me so much? Why do I not like hearing that I'm not engaged enough, or I'm not on my feet enough, or I'm not fast enough during teaching? Why does that bother me? And again, that's kind of a soul searching thing that, you're certainly more than welcome. We can kind of talk about it. I can kind of tell you what my journey has looked like, but you might need to do that path of discovery kind of on your own time but that curiosity, man, it's powerful. I strongly recommend it. Number 4. Okay. So when you get feedback, immediately, you don't have to write it down, but that would be helpful. Immediately setting an action plan for how you're going to change based on that. Now, if I'm working with a kid and someone says like, hey, make sure you vary your operant when you're presenting, I can make that change right then and there. Okay. But if they're giving me feedback that I can't make immediately, or even in that case, like, okay, yeah, I did it right now, but I need to make sure I do it in the future. I want to immediately make that plan. Like, okay, I need to add this. I need to change this. How can I accountably make that change? Right. So at the end of this training, when I say, here's your homework, how are you going to plan to make sure that happens? Because if you just let it go, that's on you. I can't force you to grow as much as I would love to. So have that plan. Number 5, follow up. This is really important. And I'm thinking about this one. I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't do this very often, and I should. But this is an important piece. So you're going to follow up and say like, hey, has this improved? You gave this feedback. I changed my approach. Have you seen it get better? And that does 2 things. That tells your person giving you feedback that you care and that you're trying, and shows that you're listening to the feedback, and makes it much more likely that they'll give you feedback in the future, which is powerful, right? But number 2, it just makes sure that, you're actually using the feedback. So if you say like, hey, like I've been trying this, and you're like, how's it going? And they say, actually, it does not seem to have gotten better. Well, that's important information that we can then utilize, right? You and the person who gave the feedback. So I can't advance the slide yet. Rob, what are you doing? I'm just going to crouch here for a second. Hi. So number 6, clarify the feedback when it's helpful. Okay. So feedback that's not clear is not valuable to anyone. So, it's your responsibility, it's the responsibility of the person giving the feedback to say it in a clear way. But like we've all read treatment plans, that we're like, what does that mean? And you go back to the person who wrote it, they know exactly what it means because it came out of their head, right? So when a person gives you feedback, very rarely are they saying it in a way that they don't actually want you to use, So they will almost always be more than happy to give you an explanation. Now, sometimes they might not be able to do it, and that's a problem. And that's where I would say, okay, if you can't tell me, show me what it looks like. and sometimes they can do that. And if they can't do that, then that's a bigger problem. And then, well, let's have a clinical meeting, kind of talk about that. But you have to clarify. If they give you feedback and you're like, oh, that sounds good, but I don't know how to do it, then that's not valuable feedback. So clarify. And then the last one, I kind of maybe should have started this one, finding common ground, right? So when someone says something to you and you initially kind of react in a way that's like, oh, I don't like lawyers, I don't like that. Or, oh, this person, they're not good at their job. Why are they telling me what to do? Or, oh, yeah, it's easy for you to say. Any of these reactions, right? You want to find the common. You can look at the baby in the back seat, right? We talk about that all the time. So think about their circumstances. But in this case, it'd be much more valuable for you to say, okay, this is annoying. Okay, I don't like this feedback. I don't like this person. You don't have to like everybody you work with, but you do have to work with them. You do have to take their feedback and provide feedback. Okay. So recognizing like, okay, what's our common ground? Our common ground is we want this child to excel, right? We all want the same thing here. We're all on the same team here. No matter anyone you interact with, anywhere on your cases is on your team. They're all on the team of the child, okay? No matter what. There's no good guys and bad guys, all the same team. So if you're actively working against someone, you're working against your own team. So find that common ground, recognize that, we all want the same thing. Please, sir, I want some more feedback. Oh, none of you are here to make faces at me while I laugh at my own jokes. All right, so let's break each of these down into some component pieces. Okay, so you're going to get really tired of this graphic because there's one for each of those 7 or 8 things that we kind of went through. And I'm going to stay kneeling down here so that I can actually read what I wrote because I picked a stupid font. That's feedback to myself. Next time, don't use this font. So the feedback giver is always here to the left of the screen. So we're talking about appreciating the compliment, right? So when they say something like, I love the way that you're working with this kid, accept it. Thanks. I've been trying hard, been working on it, so give a response that shows that you appreciate the feedback so that loop continues. So on the right, we get our change of thoughts, our reframing for those of you who are from the therapy world. And reframing is super powerful. So, if you're thinking like, oh, that's not true, I hate this, it's not real, they're lying, they're wrong, I suck. So you can recognize, like, I don't always feel that way, but I have been trying, I wonder, that's that curiosity piece. I wonder why I don't like hearing that, so, yeah. Oh, here we go. First keyword. So there's gonna be 3 keywords during the presentation that you will need in order to get credit. Today, there are going to be 3 of Rob's favorite Star Wars characters. I can't name my favorite 3, but I will name 3 of my favorite Star Wars characters. And we will start with probably my favorite, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-WANKENOBI. Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is probably my favorite. So he's number 1, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You don't have to know how to spell them. You just have to choose the multiple choice. So that's the first one. So the next one is not explaining away negative feelings. So when a person gives you feedback, you got to show up on time, right? You need to get your notes in on time. You need to make sure you're mixing and varying. You need to make sure that you're talking in a more calm tone when the child, whatever the feedback is. Your response should be, okay, right? That sounds okay. That's helpful. It might be to ask for clarity, right? It might be to state what you need to do, but like restate, like, I'm hearing what you're saying. I need to arrive at sessions on time. You're right. Okay. So you want that positive reply. So your brain might be thinking like, this person has no idea what they're talking about, right? Like, I cannot possibly get here on time. You want to reframe that to a more, not conclusions. We're always striving for. Somebody help me.
What are you trying to say? Say more.
I'm trying to say, like, what's something, instead of thinking about how it won't work, you're thinking about things constructive. No,
Constructive? No, that's not what you're.
constructive works. I'm
Okay.
thinking of ways. Thank you, Gina. I'm thinking of ways to make it better, right? So what is the problem? How can I make it better? I need to talk to my supervisor about my route. I'm late every day, you know? So changing your brain to one of more solutions focused. That's kind of what I was going for. Responding without emotion. Okay. So when you hear that person kind of say something that, you know, like, you know, oh boy, like this is hurtful. Like I've been trying so hard to make sure my materials are set up. And so they tell you, they give you some feedback. You know, your response should not be like, that's not possible, right? Or I can't do that, right? It should be if it's something like this where you feel like it's too difficult, you know, ask for, okay, can you help me with that, right? Like I'm having a hard time with this responsibility. Like I want to have my materials organized. I want to go fast enough. I want to make progress. So, you know, hearing that and responding in a way that shows that you're taking the feedback, you understand the feedback, but maybe there's something that you need help with. So you might be thinking, what an idiot this person is. Like, obviously I'm trying, I work really hard. How I don't see you trying, you know, like you might respond to that, but you want to change your brain to think about like, why is that, you know, ringing a bell in my brain? Why am I getting upset about that? Recognizing, you know, that you do work hard, but there might be something you need to change, you know, that's solutions focused. That's where we want to go. Setting goals, the person gives you, you know, they give you feedback. You know, again, we're all trying to do a good job. So feedback always makes us feel like someone's saying we're not actually trying to do a good job, but that's not really what feedback is. But I recognize that that's going to happen in your brain. It happens in mine too. So when they say like, hey, you got to have more practice opportunities. Hey, you got to, you know, speed up your teaching a little bit. Hey, you know, you need to, when the kid is running around the playground, you really should be running with them. You know, when they're giving you that feedback, you know, and your initial thought is like, I do that, or, oh, I can't do that, or, oh, you know, whatever it might be. Your response can then be, hey, can you help me with that? You know, like I, you know, like in your head, you're thinking, I obviously want to do the best thing, but their you know, their opinion is that you need to do more of something or less of something or do something a little bit differently. So how can you respond in a way that shows you're taking that feedback and then maybe clarifying it? So in this case, you know, hey, can you help me come up with a sample schedule? You know, like I feel like I'm filling the time effectively. So what can I do to change that? These are all, this is just laced with examples of things feedback you can give and feedback you can take. So definitely want to send out this PowerPoint. So instead of thinking, you know, this is about goals, Rob. So instead of thinking like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, you know, I'll do that. I'll think about that when I have time. That is not the right approach. You know, you are living in time right now. You know, so the best time is right now. So think about, okay, what's my plan right now? What can I do differently right now? Okay, follow up on the feedback. Okay, so when you have that lull, when the person says like, hey, you know, what do you need? You know, how can I help? And we have a tendency to get jaded with this sort of stuff and think like, oh, you didn't help me last time. You're not going to help me this time. So I'm just not going to ask. That's when you stop asking, that the onus shifts to you. You know, I know your history might say they're not going to help you, but when you stop asking, you know, you become at fault for that. So when they give you that opportunity, or you need to seek out that opportunity, you know, and say like, hey, like, I'm wondering how you think I'm doing with what we talked about before. Like you had said that I should pick up my pace a little bit. Do you think that I've gotten to where I want to be? So your brain might be saying you're just hoping for the best. If I don't ask, I don't, you know, don't ask, don't tell, or whatever. You know, that's not the right expression for this, but you know what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to be like, you know, like he hasn't said anything, so I must be doing well. Is that the case? That's not the case. You know, like they might just be frustrated, or, you know, they forgot about it, or they're overworked, whatever. There's a million reasons why they might not follow up themselves. So you can't just think like, I'm just going to hope for the best, no news is good news. That's the expression that I should have said. You want to say like, oh, I think I'm doing it, but I should check, I should double check my work. Clarifying the feedback. Okay. So a person says you need to be more engaged. You need to be more fun. You need to like be more happy. You need to, be more, on top of things, right? So you might have an idea of what that means, right? But you don't really want to leave it open to interpretation. So ask for clarity, tell me what being more, engaged looks like, show me ways, tell me how I can do that. Right. So, and being careful, right? Being careful of your affect during that question, like because if you're like, tell me how I can do that. Right. That's not going to come across great. You're not going to get much feedback then. So you want to really be careful about how you say it. But, like, oh, that seems important. I hear what you're saying. Can you kind of show me or help me figure out like what, being more exciting during session? What are some examples of that? What are some ways to do that? And then following up, that feedback chain later, like, does this look like what you want it to look like? Because your brain's going to think like, yeah, nice. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Like you don't even know how to explain to me, right? We'll give them the benefit of the doubt and, ask them, reframe your brain. Don't call them a jerk, even in your brain. Try to find that common ground. So they bring up something and it's something that like rings an annoyance bell in your happy little heart. So they bring up the data sheet that you can't stand, right? And this person even knows, I know you don't like the data sheet, but I need it that way for my FBA, right? Now that's a conversation to have that we should be having. You should be developing these things together. You need to be on board for this. The whole team needs to be able to fill it out. But if it's just like, I know it seems ridiculous, but I need this data. You can clarify. We're like, look, it's not that I don't like it, like, because you don't like a data sheet, there should be really very little emotion about data, but I'm having a hard time completing it. I'm having a hard time doing it accurately, right? So shifting that mindset from that immediate, done with you, shifting from that kind of like dismissal to a solutions focused kind of approach. Hopefully that makes sense. So trying to find that common ground. We both want to help this kid. We both need this data continue to serve this kid, right? We both need whatever it is. It's in my best interest to work effectively with this other human, with these other humans, so finding that common ground. And then also a very important piece to remember here is KWTSTSD. What does that mean, Rob? Well, it means you need to know when to shut that sewage down. Okay, so as we mentioned, I'm just imagining that all of you are just laughing hilariously at this great joke, and I have no proof either way. So as we mentioned kind of at the beginning, there's going to be things that people say that are not helpful. I need to stand up. My crouching is starting to hurt. So we need to be ready. So when feedback is hurtful, right? So when it's like personal or it's just nasty or mean, or it's got no, like, it's not something you could work on. It's about your character. It's about your humanity, your appearance. God forbid someone would, like, oh, Rob, you're just not handsome enough to work with this kid. Oh boy, wow. Yeah, why would anyone ever say that? But I don't know, people say weird things sometimes. It's demeaning, it's gossipy, right? So if it becomes about, oh, so-and-so said, or oh, I heard that, you or somebody else, I heard this is going on. So when it gets to be that kind of gossipy stuff, like, this is really where like we lose that team approach and we got to shut it down. Okay. Or not constructive, right? So it's just not valuable. Now, in that case, what would I encourage you to do? I'd encourage you to move it towards something that is constructive, but sometimes it's too hurtful or too personal, and those are cases where you can, you really need to kind of like squash it. Second code word. So Rob's second Star Wars character that is one character that he enjoys, I don't have a top three, would be Captain Rex. R-E-X. Captain Rex is arguably the coolest of the clone troopers. So I like him very much. So character number 2 is Captain Rex. So I believe the next slide is, so ways to shut it down. Okay, so if people are saying things that are hurtful, not constructive, gossipy, etc., so I wanted you to have some canned responses, and you got to go with kind of what works for you, right? So, but even the most, well, if it's really just like horribly unacceptable or hateful, then you can walk away. I still wouldn't engage them physically, though. Please don't beat your coworkers up or your caregivers up. But you might just be walking away or saying like, look, I need to leave, right? Or I'm out of here, whatever. But you do want to kind of move it back to constructive, right? So let's shift gears. Anything that signals like, you crossed the line and we need to get back. I'm not comfortable talking about that. I don't think that's relevant to this case. I don't think it's appropriate that we're talking about that. You can kind of shift to their responsibility of like, wow, that sounds like a problem. Did you talk to their supervisor about that? Right. So, when staff are talking about other staff in particular, and they're bringing up problem areas and they haven't addressed it with supervision, then that's just gossip. Right. And you're creating these chains of misinformation without any solution. So we really want to, again, same team, right? If they look bad, you look bad. We're only as strong as our weakest member. So, let's bring somebody else in on that conversation. Let's have this conversation with Ashley. Let's have that conversation with Gina present. I don't think this isn't something I'm able to field. Okay. Or you just say, that's not helpful. This conversation is not helpful. It's not making anything better. Let's switch gears. Let's move on. Let's talk about something else. Okay. So really setting that signal, because if you sit back and just let them say stuff that's hurtful, that's going to encourage them to do it in the future. They're going to start thinking that you're a trusted, recipient of that kind of stuff. So we want to shut it down. Shut that sewage down. All right, so now we're moving into the uncomfortable practice by yourself. Hopefully you're in a room with no listeners so that they don't hear you practicing. So you want to make sure that you are muted for this part initially, because we're going to have some opportunities here for you to respond to some feedback. Okay, so there's your ground rules, your reminders as we go into this. These are the things I want you to focus on. So I want you to avoid getting defensive no matter what they say. Okay, so explaining it away is almost never going to help. Okay, I want you to look for common ground. Remember that the source of the statement is someone on your team, whether that's a caregiver or a coworker, or a teacher or whatever it might be. So you want to remember that you both have the same goal. Don't refute. Don't tell them it's wrong. Don't tell them no. Don't get upset. Okay. Clarify it if needed. So your statement when you're practicing might be, can you explain that more to me? Can you show me? Can you give me examples? Okay. And set an action plan. And that's more kind of in your head. You might not actually say anything, but you might go through the whole thing. You might say like, thank you so much for that feedback. Could you show me kind of what it looks like? I really appreciate you giving me the feedback, but it's not totally clear. And then after they explain it, okay, so my plan is going to be tomorrow when I show up, I'm going to have the materials I need so that I can do it that way. So you might talk through that whole thing. I'm not going to hear because you're going to be muted. All right, so example number 1, I'm going to read it out loud, and then I want you to talk to me. I'm going to stand here, mute, okay? Mute yourselves. So I'm going to talk to you, and then I want you to reply to me. Okay, follow those standards. We're going to have several examples like this to kind of practice different observations. Okay, So I hope you're ready to talk to Rob on the computer. Keep yourself muted. All right. I feel like you've been sitting back too much during session. It's really our responsibility to actively engage our clients, and we can't do that from the couch across the room. You should all now be responding. And Lindsay is watching you all to make sure your lips are moving. And she's putting X's next to people whose lips aren't moving. Okay, that should be about enough time. So now I would love for one person maybe to unmute and maybe share what their response might look like to this. I can't see any. If nobody volunteers, Lindsay will volunteer. Are we still online?
Yeah, we're here. Should we pick someone? I'm gonna pick someone.
Pick someone.
Okay, Kristen.
Yes, you want me to respond?
Yeah.
So my response would be, I understand what you're saying. I need to make myself more engaged with our client and be in closer proximity to that client in order to observe and to do my treatment goals.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay. Thank you, Kristen.
Yep.
Not an easy thing to do such things. So thank you. Lindsay, were all their lips moving?
I think it's okay. Is it okay if we engage in covert verbal behavior for these responses?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I was practicing that in my head, like I
Okay.
think most people were.
Okay, covert. All right, all right. Good job, Gina. Thank you for advocating for yourself and your fellow staff members. Yes, you can engage in covert behavior. You can say it in your head. All right, all right. So how do we do? Was your, you can see how you might get defensive to that statement, where someone's kind of like, it's a little bit snarky, like, it kind of doubles down, like you've been sitting too much. And then they kind of make this comment about, you can't do that from the couch across the room, so, it could have been nicer. But so you can see where a person might get defensive. So baby in the mirror tells us that we need to be kind of aware of ourselves. This is a self-reflection kind of test here. So were you now defensive? Did you look for common ground? Did you, you might want to, now Kristen, it seemed like she totally knew what was going on here, right? But you can imagine where somebody might need a little bit more input. Oh yes, screaming.
Also, yes, okay, so
We would, yeah, I actually was able to, since I'm knelt down here. So Jess, we'd love to hear your screaming babies. This baby actually looks a tiny bit like your baby's, not really though. That's probably offensive to you and your babies. So I strike that from the record. All right, so practice number 2, here we go. I need you to pick up, get ready. Remember to be on mute, okay? I need you to pick up the pace during intensive teaching. If we go too slow, it's more likely that he'll get bored and walk away or start swiping things off the table. Respond. Okay. Who's got a response? Oh, yeah. All right, Jess, give us your typed response for this one. I'll call on you because I know you're there. Typing.
I was gonna say I can go too. I have a good one.
Ooh, okay. I like to hear both. Thanks for that feedback. I didn't think about my pace being so impactful. Jess, Adam, I love it. Lindsay, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, okay, I can absolutely do that. I understand what you're saying. Can you show me what you would like me to do and how fast?
Love it. I need help in setting up my materials in order to go faster. Oh, Ashley, I need help in setting up my materials in order to go faster. Could you help me with how to set this up more successfully? Yes, yes, brilliant. What smart humans. All right. There's no self-reflection after this one. We're just going to go through. This is my favorite. Okay, get ready. Here we go. I need you to be more fun during session. BHT Chad is really fun during session, and little Trevor just loves it. Respond. Chad and Trevor. Oh, yes. All right. What do we got? What are we going to say to this guy?
Can you explain to me what Chad does during session? Hopefully, maybe I can incorporate that in future sessions.
Yes, good. Jess has a very similar response. What are some things that Chad does that Trevor really enjoys? Yes, good. Yeah, so this one needs clarity. It would be very easy to be angry at this statement. Can you give me examples of how I'm not as fun? What is Chad doing? Yeah, good. Yeah, so we're looking for clarity on what Chad's doing, but we're also looking for clarity on like what's not fun about what I'm doing. But like this is a really hard thing to hear somebody say, like you're not wrong in being kind of hurt by this statement, but to be productive, you could later kind of say like, hey, like that was kind of hurtful the way you said that, so that's that feedback loop. Right? Like, I see what you're saying. I totally want to do better. I really want to engage little Trevor. But like the way that you said that made like hurt my feelings. Like, I think you could have said it in a way, you can tell your coworkers that they hurt your feelings. Yeah, why not? All right, here we go. Next practice opportunity. You cannot keep wearing that to session. It's not work appropriate. Respond. Cannot. All right. How are we going to respond to this one? This one's kind of about appearance. But it
I want
does.
to hear from Chantel or Holly.
Ooh.
I feel like this one's the hardest one because we know our dress code super well.
Yeah.
But I would definitely ask, could we review the dress code and what I can wear that's also functional with what I'm doing with the kids?
Oh. Yes. Okay, good, Jeff. Yeah, do you have suggestions? I think Chantel and Holly, this is a really good one for you guys because you do work on site. You've got a program, so you've got staff. You see what they're wearing, whereas it's not as often. So, yeah. If someone says that to you, you probably aren't breaking dress code on purpose, but it definitely happens. Good. Get some clarity on there. It's not rude. I mean, it's kind of rude, I guess, but like they're not saying they don't like it. They're just saying it's not work appropriate. I don't know. All right, here we go. After presenting the full prompt, rearrange the field so that the check trial actually shows mastery more clearly. Respond. What do we got? It's the kind of stuff I want to hear people saying to each other all the time.
I'm not really sure what you mean. Can you show me first?
Oh, Lindsay. Yep. I appreciate your feedback, but I'm not clear. Can you please show me what? Yeah, this is one where like, this is like, it's kind of a jargony response, there's a lot of stuff in there. So we got full prompt, we got rearrange the field, we got check trial, we got mastery, so like, if you're not wrapping your head around all four of those concepts, then you're not going to be able to benefit from this feedback. Now, you might just be like, like maybe the second part isn't that important. So after presenting the full prompt, rearrange the field. So like, plus there's like, that's not actually probably what the person means. Like they probably want to present the full prompt and then have the person respond and then rearrange the field would be my hope. So yeah. Clarity is probably needed on this, but it is like, it's the right start. People are trying to give feedback here. All right. You're the only person on this case that seems to care about little Clarence. Todd is not giving you the materials that you need, and the other two staff just sit on their butts. Respond. Little Clarence. He's making himself laugh again. Mom, tell Rob to stop telling jokes that only he cares about. Well, how are we going to respond to this one? STSD. Did I lose you? Nobody's got one?
No, we're here.
What do you do? We got an answer in the chat. Do you have suggestions as to how we can get the team working together more effectively? Ooh, Jeff. Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
Have you spoken to Todd? What does Todd want to see in sessions?
Yep.
What are the expectations?
Yep. I'd say like, hey, this sounds like we really need to call a team meeting. What approach have you taken to talk to Todd directly? Yeah, Ashley.
Yeah, I was gonna say this definitely calls for a team meeting.
Yeah, right. Whew. Yeah, there's gossip going on here. We've lost sight of like what our shared purpose is. Like, this is just not helpful. There's like a little bit here where you could be like, oh, hey, thanks for recognizing how hard I work, maybe, but it's like a underhanded.
It's kind of backhanded, yeah.
Yeah. Is it underhanded or backhanded or both?
Backhanded.
Backhanded. Yeah, you're right. Why did I even ask? Less silly words. Oh, final keyword for the day does not mean you can leave. It's 10 o'clock. Oh my God, mine is completely wrong. So let me just blow through here. So final, we started a little bit late. So if you can hold on, please hold on. If not, you can watch the rest of the video when we post it. So your final keyword is Cad Bane, C-A-D-B-A-N-E. He is a bounty hunter. I can't remember which type of alien he is, but he's very cool. Cad Bane is your final one. So another one. Okay, so in order to get credit for this, right, you're going to need to include on the post test one person that you ask directly for feedback. Okay, so that's your true homework. You need to tell us whether the feedback they gave you was clear. Remember, it's your responsibility to clarify. And then you need to tell us whether you were able to use that feedback to change your practice immediately. Again, honor system. So you could just lie about this, but lying about it is not going to help you. So I expect you to go out there. You still have, half a day today, and then you can carry this over into next week and ask someone for feedback. And then beyond that, I expect you to do these things. So ask for, provide, encourage, accept, use, and cherish immediate and helpful feedback. So we're really pushing for this idea of over-the-shoulder feedback, where people are giving feedback in the moment. I know people sometimes prefer feedback kind of after the fact, and then here's our references. So sorry to have kept you a little bit long. My clock, as you can see here, says that I still have 3 minutes, so I thought I was killing it, but we did good. So thank you for bearing with us on a little bit of uncomfortable activities, and yeah, we'll post the recording soon. Thanks, everybody.